What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our college football channel. We continue with our 2023 schedule preview and projected record series. The Wisconsin Badgers are up next. Here was the schedule from last season. They were 6-6 in the regular season. Really a disappointing year for Wisconsin. Made the coaching change, and now it's going to be a totally different Wisconsin team heading into next year. But losing to Washington State. Thought the non-conference schedule was pretty easy, but they lost that game. They will play them again this year. We'll look at that in just a second. They had to play Ohio State out of the East. They had to play Michigan State, which looked tough in the preseason, but they wound up not being very good last year, but they still lost that game. They also had to play Maryland, so they didn't get to play Indiana or Rutgers, the two worst teams out of the East. So it wound up being, a pretty difficult schedule. Good news this year is they get to play Rutgers and Indiana. They will play them both. So we'll start at the top. They open up with Buffalo on September 2nd, and then they'll play Washington State, this time on the road. That could be a tough test there. Again, Washington State beat Wisconsin last year. They play Georgia Southern on the 16th. Then they'll play on the road at Purdue, first Big Ten game, and that's a big one in the division there on September 23rd. Road game at Purdue. Then they get a bye week, a very early bye week. It'll come at the very end of September. So you play 4 games, get the bye week. Then they'll play Rutgers on October the 7th. Then another home game. They get Iowa at home on October the 14th. So back-to-back home games there. And they don't have any back-to-back road games. So they have a really nice schedule there. They get 5 of their conference games at home, 4 on the road. Really beneficial schedule there in the conference. They do play a road game again against Washington State, so that kind of evens things up. But so yeah, they'll play Iowa there on the 14th. Then they'll play on the road at Illinois on October 21st. Then they play Ohio State at home this time on October 28th. A game that they might have a chance in this time. We'll see. They go into the month of November. They start things off with a road game at Indiana. Then a home game against Northwestern. Nebraska will be at home on November 18th. And they close things out with Minnesota on the road on the 25th. So, yeah, this is not too bad of a schedule. Washington State's the toughest non-conference game. Like I said, you get 5 conference games at home. No real tough stretches or back-to-backs. I mean, the toughest back-to-back is, I guess, Illinois and Ohio State. Not too bad there. Road games, you got Purdue, Illinois, Indiana, Minnesota. They'll have a chance to win all 4 of those road games. You get Ohio State at home, Indiana and Northwestern back-to-back, not too tough there. Kind of a break later on in the season. Rutgers early on. So, yeah, this is a very favorable schedule for Wisconsin, and a reason why I think they might be the front runner in the Big Ten West. I'm not going to say that for sure right now. I haven't fully evaluated all of the rosters, but schedule-wise, they might be the front runner in that division. So let's go to the projection now and see what the record looks like. Our projection last year had them at 7-5, and of course they went 6-6. Did not quite make it to that projection. I personally picked them to go 8-4. I was a little bit higher on this team than they turned out to be. I thought Graham Mertz would play much better. He was awful last year. Now he's gone, and it's a new coaching staff, new quarterback. Tanner Mordecai probably going to be the starter. I mean, it's going to be a totally different team. But we're going to basically do this like I've done to all the Big Ten West teams. All of them except for Northwestern are pretty much just grouped together. And we call all those games 50-50 games just because that division seems to always be so wide open. It does kind of feel like Northwestern has kind of fallen behind those teams. But everyone else, I think, has a chance. Some maybe better than others. But the scale that we'll use here, if it's a 50-50 game, it'll be in the white. Those are games where I think the spread will be less than a touchdown. Under 20, over 80, those are games where I think the spread will be 20 or more points. 20-29, 71-80, those are the games where I think the spread will be double digits. And then 30-39, 61-70, those are games where I think the spread will be about a touchdown. 6, 7, 8, 9 points in that range. So we'll start with the easy wins here. Buffalo and Georgia Southern, not guaranteed wins. And it's possible that Wisconsin's only going to be favored by 17 or 18, but I think that it's probably just over that 20 mark, 20, 21, kind of in that. That's my guess. It really doesn't matter though, even if it was double digits. If it was in the blue, it would still be the same for the projection because we count the blue and the green games as wins. But we'll put those games in the green. A couple of fairly easy wins there for Wisconsin. Then you go to Rutgers. I think they will be double-digit favorites in this one. Rutgers really doesn't look to be all that good this year. The game's at Wisconsin. Because of all that, I think they will be favored by 16, 17 points here. And so those are the three games that will be counted as wins. Let's get to the rest of the schedule. And like I said, we're going to have a bunch of 50-50 games. That's just how it works out if you're in the Big Ten West. I think Indiana and Northwestern, though, are games where they will clearly be favored by 7 or 8 points, maybe more than that if Wisconsin turns out to be better than, I really don't know what to expect from this team. I think they have a chance to be a very good team, a top 15, top 20 team, but based off of where they were last year at 6-6. So if they're a lot better than they were last year, maybe these games should even be in the blue, but we're not going to try to do too much predicting here because our predictions won't come until after the spring. But based off of last year and how good the teams were and kind of how we expect them to be improved, I think Wisconsin will be favored clearly in both of these games, maybe by double digits, but again, we're going to go conservative. That's what we do when we do these projections, and we'll keep those in the purple, and we'll say Wisconsin will be favored by about 8. Okay, how about underdogs? I think there's one game, that's Ohio State. I think they're only about a touchdown underdog in this game. Ohio State, new quarterback. The game is at Wisconsin. Of course, that's a tough place to play. I think you put all that together, the spread for this one's only going to be 8 or 9 points. Again, if Wisconsin is not improved very much, this one could possibly be one that should be in the orange. Maybe Wisconsin will be double-digit underdogs. Hard to say right now. But again, going conservative. And then that leaves the rest of the schedule. Washington State, Purdue, Iowa, Illinois, Nebraska, Minnesota. A bunch of 50-50 games. And if I had to predict, I would probably predict Wisconsin to be favored in maybe all of these games by about a field goal. I think Purdue's going to be dropped off a little bit. The Iowa game is at Wisconsin. I think Illinois drops off a little bit. Nebraska is at Wisconsin. Minnesota, maybe that's a pick 'em. Minnesota is one that's kind of tough right now to figure out how good they're gonna be. Washington State, that's a tough one. It's at Washington State. Maybe the Cougars are favored there, but it won't be by much. And again, I think all of these games can be considered 50-50 games, which means half the schedule. So a lot of close games probably for Wisconsin. If they can win those close games, it could be a very special season. Because again, the only game where they're a clear underdog is Ohio State. But you slip up, you lose some close games, could be a disappointing season. The projection though is 8-4. So that's what you get when you run the numbers. Using 35% for Ohio State, 65% for the games in the purple, 50% for all these games in the white. Count the blue and the green games as wins. You get 8-4 as a projection. So a higher projection than last year because of a favorable schedule. This is a really good schedule. With the 5 conference home games, only Ohio State is the tough game out of the East. You get Indiana and you get Rutgers out of the East. Really, really favorable schedule there like we talked about. And so how could you get to 8-4? Well, let's just say they lose to Ohio State. They beat Indiana and Northwestern. And then you just split the 50-50 games. You go 3-3 in those games, and there you go. That's 8-4. Maybe it doesn't go that way, but that is one way you could get to 8-4. I think this team has a chance to be better than that, though. These are 50-50 games, yes, but I think Wisconsin probably will be favored in most, if not all of them. And that's why, again, I see potential for the Badgers to have a really, really good season if everything comes together with the new coaching staff and the new players. Of course, that's always a question mark. But projection for Wisconsin in 2023 is 8-4.